at an old-school American restaurant named Matsumoto's Heritage Grill, located in the heart of Manhattan. A woman of about 50, wearing faded blue work overalls, was sitting solemnly at a dark wooden table. Suddenly, a man in a black funeral suit pointed a finger at her and growled, "Not a suitable match. Going to the in-laws meeting dressed like this. Do you want to bring shame upon my family?" The daughter could only lower her head, tears falling onto her hands. But the woman wearing the work overalls, who in fact was the unsuitable match. The shocking truth was still ahead, reserved for those who had been deceived by appearances and were about to realize the biggest mistake of their lives. Before starting the story, if you find stories like this touching your emotions, please pause for a few seconds and click the subscribe button to support me. This way, the next moving stories will find you more easily. Now let's listen to the story together. On the west side of New York, Matsumoto's Heritage Grill was surrounded by carefully tended maple trees. Upon stepping through the dark wooden gate, the smell of oak and the formal atmosphere immediately made any guest feel the high quality and class of the place. On that particular day, at this special location, a group of people who might soon become one family had gathered. The main character of the in-laws meeting was Thomas Kensington, a young doctor working at a university hospital in New York. His fiancée, Sarah Miller, was a nurse at the same hospital. They met at work, supported each other, fell in love, and finally decided to get married. Thomas's father, Richard Kensington, and mother, Martha Kensington, considered this day a significant milestone in elevating their son's life. Richard was the CEO of Kensington Builders, a large construction company, with hundreds of millions of dollars in annual revenue. He wore a custom-made Italian suit, and a sparkling Patek Philippe watch adorned his wrist. Martha, on the other hand, was draped in a high-end party dress, combined with luxurious diamond jewelry, exuding the aura of a wealthy and powerful woman. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Thomas and Sarah were the first to arrive at the restaurant. Sarah wore an elegant beige dress and a small pearl necklace. She bowed respectfully and could not hide her tension. Martha smiled faintly at her grace. "You're even prettier in person than in the pictures. I understand why Thomas loves you," Martha said gently, holding Sarah's hand. Up to that moment, everything was perfect, except for one thing. Sarah's mother had not yet appeared, even though the appointment time had passed. "I'm sorry, my mom is stuck," Sarah said tightly, clutching her phone. She kept checking her messages and constantly bowed in apology. The Kensington couple's eyes gradually became annoyed. "Being late for the first meeting. Such awareness is truly worrisome," Martha whispered, but loud enough for Sarah to hear. Finally, Sarah's phone connected. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I'm in a taxi now. I'll be there in about 10 minutes. Wait for me." "Okay." Richard glanced at his watch and sneered. 40 minutes late. That's disrespectful." Just then, murmurs sounded at the entrance of the restaurant. The door opened, and the person who walked in had an appearance completely out of place in the luxurious setting. She wore a blue work uniform with a name tag on her chest that read, "Miller Cleaning Services," old sneakers and yellow rubber gloves in her hand. Her hair was slightly messy. Her face was dotted with dust, and she faintly smelled of cleaning solution. Without hesitation, she walked straight to Sarah and bowed. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm late. The last cleaning shift had a water leak incident. I had to deal with it before I could rush over here." She spoke apologetically but very politely. The Kensington couple looked at the scene stunned. "Could this person be—" Martha forced a smile and looked at Sarah. "Yes, this is my mother. Her name is Linda Miller. Thank you both for inviting me today." Linda bowed deeply. Richard crossed his arms silently, assessing her from head to toe. Martha offered a polite smile. but her voice was full of coldness. "If you would, could you perhaps freshen up a little in the restroom?" Linda paused for a second, and then nodded softly. "I apologize. I will be right back." When the door closed, the entire room sank into an icy silence. No one said a word, but the uncomfortable atmosphere was palpable. A moment later, Linda returned. She had washed her face and straightened her hair, but her clothing remained the same. She sat down, bowing deeply. "I apologize for the delay. I truly value this meeting today." But both Richard and Martha avoided her gaze. "It's getting late. Shall we continue?" Martha said, her voice sounding forcedly polite, but filled with rejection. Throughout the conversation, every question revolved only around Thomas and Sarah. Linda tried to join the conversation, but was ignored. The restaurant's high-end dishes, Wagyu beef steak, butter-grilled American scallops, organic salad, tasted unappetizing to everyone. Occasionally, Linda smiled at her daughter and said, "Thank you, Thomas, for helping Sarah at the hospital." Thomas could only offer an awkward, guilty smile. Sarah kept her head down, her hands trembling from the pain of seeing her mother treated as if she didn't exist. In the middle of the tense atmosphere, Martha spoke up. "Sarah, isn't nursing quite tiring? Yes, I find it tiring, but I love my job. But if you marry Thomas, you won't need to work night shifts anymore. A doctor's wife shouldn't have to work so hard." Sarah responded gently, but Martha smiled. Young people nowadays are really different. In the past, when women got married, their main focus was the family. The atmosphere immediately turned cold. Just then, "Excuse me, is this the Kensington family's table?" A deep, warm male voice rang out. The door opened and a man in a dark blue suit walked in. He was tall, professionally poised, with sharp eyes, appearing to be in his early 30s. "I apologize for being late. I am Jonathan Moore, Sarah Miller's cousin. I am a corporate law attorney at Moore & Associates, a law firm in Manhattan." Richard and Martha immediately changed their attitude. Jonathan sat down next to Linda and said, "Auntie came here despite working hard all day." "Thank you, Auntie." Linda spoke softly. "I told you not to come." Jonathan smiled and then turned to the Kensington family. "Without Aunt Linda, I would never have been able to attend law school. She is the hardest working and most respectable person I have ever known." But that respect did not change the Kensington family's view for the remainder of the meal. Just a few minutes later, Martha put down her chopsticks, looking at Sarah with a soft but heavily implied voice. "Sarah, I apologize for having to ask this, but does your mother still do that kind of work regularly?" Sarah gently squeezed her hands under the table. "Yes, my mother still works as a cleaning lady. That is a valuable job," Martha smiled. "But we think the person marrying Thomas should have a slightly more suitable family background." Those words, though gentle, were fundamentally clear, a kind of unsuitable match, wrapped in polite language. Jonathan was about to say something, but Linda gently shook her head, as if to stop him. "It's all right, Sarah. I'm used to it." She spoke in a calm voice, but one that contained resignation, making Sarah choke up with pain. After the tense meeting, Sarah's life began to spiral. At the hospital, she still cared for patients as before, still smiling gracefully. But every time she went into the restroom alone during her lunch break, she broke down and wept. The image of her mother being treated like an invisible person kept repeating in her head. No matter how polite and kind her mother had been, a simple work uniform was enough to make her the object of judgment. Then a phone call rang. The caller was Martha Kensington. "Sarah, do you have a moment for me? I want to talk." The meeting place was a minimalist cafe on the Upper East Side, with a dominant white theme and fresh flowers on the tables. Martha was already waiting. "I'll be direct today." Martha began, taking a gentle sip of tea. "Regarding you and Thomas, I think it's difficult to continue." Sarah was silent for a long time, her two hands clutching the teacup to hide her trembling. "Because of my mother." Martha did not avoid her gaze. "Yes, your mother's profession and lifestyle are really too different from our family. But my mother raised me alone, working since 4 in the morning every day." Sarah's voice choked up. "Yes, that's admirable," Martha said slowly. "But marriage is not based only on admiration. It is a connection between two families." Those words were as cold as a final verdict. A few minutes later, Sarah's phone vibrated. It was Thomas. She swallowed her hand, shaking as she pressed answer. "Sarah, I'm sorry." Thomas's voice was low, as if he had struggled for a long time. "But perhaps the worlds we grew up in are too different. What my parents said isn't entirely wrong. I've thought a lot, and I think we should stop." Sarah was stunned, staring at the phone screen. The person she trusted the most, the one who promised to build a future with her, abandoned her so easily. She left the cafe and walked silently under the streetlights of the Upper East Side. Everything blurred in her eyes. When Sarah got home, her mother Linda was wearing an apron and preparing dinner. "You're home early. I bought some delicious fresh salmon today." But just seeing her mother's back, Sarah could not hold back anymore. All her emotions burst forth. "Mom!" Sarah burst into sobs. Linda quickly turned around. "Sarah, what is it? What's wrong?" Sarah choked out. "Why did they say we're an unsuitable match just because you work cleaning? Just because you wear work clothes, they're ashamed." Linda froze. She walked over and hugged Sarah tightly. "It's not your fault. It's not, my dear." Sarah shook her head in her mother's arms. "You worked so hard to raise me. It's not your fault at all." Linda gently squeezed Sarah tighter. "No matter what anyone says, I am still proud of you. And if the man you chose abandons you just because of me, then that person was never worthy of protecting you." The small room was left with only Sarah's muffled sobs. Just then, the door burst open. "Sarah! Aunt Linda!" A man in a suit rushed in. Jonathan running straight from the law office, breathing heavily. "What happened?" "Why are you crying like this?" Sarah struggled to speak. "They said our family isn't worthy. They called off the wedding because Mom is a cleaning lady." Jonathan's face immediately darkened. He clenched his fists. "That's outrageous! They dared to insult Auntie like that. Auntie, you don't need to tolerate this. We should let them know the truth." But Linda decisively shook her head. "Jonathan, it's not time yet. I want to see their true nature to the very end." Jonathan almost snapped. "You're too kind. If they knew who you really are, they would probably collapse." Linda looked at Sarah, her eyes serious. "Sarah, there's something I want to tell you. Something I've hidden from you for many years." Sarah wiped her tears. "What is it, Mom?" Linda slowly said. "I don't just work cleaning. I also have another job, a very big one." Sarah was surprised. "What do you mean, Mom?" Jonathan looked at his aunt with tension in his eyes. "Are you really going to tell her?" Linda nodded. "But not now. You will understand. Trust me." Jonathan immediately took out his phone and made a quick call in a serious tone. "Proceed with the plan. The time has come." Sarah panicked. "Jonathan, what plan?" Jonathan replied succinctly. "You'll know soon. Those arrogant people will pay the price." Linda stopped him. "Don't be hasty. Cold revenge is always sharper." Sarah looked at the two of them, completely unable to understand what was happening. The next morning, Jonathan, dressed impeccably in a suit, said to Linda, before leaving the house. "Auntie, the action officially begins today. Be prepared." Linda nodded. "Don't overdo it. The important thing is for them to realize their mistake on their own." Sarah stood beside them, completely unaware that her fate was about to change. A few days later, at the management floor of Kensington Builders, a young employee frantically ran into Richard's office. "Sir, urgent news from Tato Holdings America." Richard frowned. "Tato, New York's largest urban development group. Yes, they want to invite our company to bid on a redevelopment project worth about $5 billion. Richard jumped up. "No way! How can a mid-sized company like ours be invited directly?" But the invitation was real, and Richard began to believe that a great fortune had arrived. That night, he told Martha excitedly, "If we win this project, Thomas can have a spectacular wedding. It's a good thing we were decisive with that other family. A girl whose mother is a cleaning lady. Thank goodness we avoided it." Martha nodded contentedly. "That's right. We escaped an unsuitable match." Neither of them knew. The person they had just scorned was the head of the corporation they were so eager to collaborate with. At the same time, on the 63rd floor of the Taito Tower, America skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan, the chairman of the corporation, Linda Miller, was standing in front of a glass wall overlooking the city sparkling with lights. Jonathan stood beside her reporting, "Madam Chairman Richard Kensington, CEO of Kensington Builders, has officially submitted a written expression of intent to bid." Linda did not turn around, only nodded quietly. "What about the investigation?" Jonathan replied. "They are a mid-sized company, financially stable, but Mr. Richard is very ambitious. As for his wife Martha, she is a housewife." Jonathan paused slightly. "And she is the one who spoke the insulting words to you and Sarah at the meeting." Linda closed her eyes for a second. "Is that so?" She didn't say anything more, just thoughtfully looked at the traffic below. Then she opened her eyes, her voice calm but sharp. "Arrange a direct meeting." A few days later, at Tato Tower, America. Richard Kensington wore his most expensive suit, constantly adjusting his tie. He stepped out of the elevator, looking nervous, yet excited. This was the golden opportunity of his life. A secretary approached. "Mr. Kensington." "The chairman will be right here. Please come into the reception room." The reception room was vast, with luxurious dark furniture, and on the walls hung photos of Chairman Linda, with major business leaders, and even heads of state. Richard was almost breathless with the sheer class. He whispered, "This really is the center of power in New York." Just then the door opened. Richard immediately stood up and bowed. "Madam Chairman, it is a great honor to meet—" He stopped. His mouth fell open. The person who walked in was not a luxurious businesswoman. Instead, it was a woman in a blue work uniform, with a Tato cleaning name tag on her chest, wearing yellow rubber gloves, and carrying a cleaning tool bag. Linda Miller. She was the very woman he had insulted at the in-laws meeting. Richard yelled, "What a cleaning lady! Get out of here right now. I'm waiting for the chairman." But Linda said nothing. She walked straight to the table, took off her gloves, put on a black suit jacket from a nearby cabinet, and adjusted her collar. Then she placed a business card on the table. She looked up at Richard, her eyes sharp but not angry. "Hello, Director Kensington. I am Linda Miller, Chairman of the Tato Holdings America Group." Richard froze. His face turned pale. His head was spinning. Linda, Sarah's mother, the person he despised, was the chairman of America's largest urban development group. You are the chairman, Herr." Sarah's mother. The door opened again. Jonathan walked in composed. "Hello, Mr. Kensington. I am Jonathan Moore, Chief Operating Officer of Tato Holdings America. We met before I am Sarah's cousin. Richard felt all the strength drain out of him. What is happening? Linda looked straight at him and said, That day you said our family was an unsuitable match. Do you remember? Her voice wasn't raised, but every word cut like a knife. Linda walked to the window, looking out over the vast expanse of Manhattan. She began to tell her story, her voice slow but strong. I lost my husband when I was very young. I raised my daughter alone. I started cleaning buildings to support Sarah. But I didn't just clean. I observed everything how the building operated. Waste points, the management system. From there, I made suggestions for improvements. Started a small company, then expanded and invested. 30 years later, Tato Holdings America has become a conglomerate with dozens of subsidiaries. Jonathan added, no matter how high her position, Chairman Linda still personally inspects sites every day, still keeps up her cleaning work at 4 in the morning. That is why everyone respects her. Richard listened, cold sweat dripping down his spine. He tried to stand firm, but his legs trembled so much he nearly collapsed. Then Linda turned back, her eyes sharp but calm. And because of what you did, I will not award this project to your company. Richard fell kneeling right on the floor of the reception room. Madam Chairman, please, this is our company's lifeline. We will change. Please. Linda shook her head. You are not losing this project because I am the chairman. You are losing it because you judge others by their profession and the clothes they wear. You do not respect people. And the worst thing is, Linda continued, you insulted the dignity of my daughter Sarah. Linda turned and walked out, leaving Richard kneeling in despair in the cold room. That evening at the Kensington Villa on the Upper East Side, Martha rushed to meet her husband full of hope. Richard, how did it go? Did we get the contract? What did they say? Richard didn't say a word. He sat down on the sofa, clutching his head. The air was stiflingly silent. Finally, he placed a business card on the table. Martha picked it up and read it, and her face turned ashen. Linda Miller, chairman of Tato Holdings America. Martha seemed to collapse. No, it can't be. Is that the woman from the meeting that day? Richard nodded, his voice trembling. Yes, the person we insulted was the chairman, a legendary businesswoman, and Sarah's mother. Martha sank onto the chair, covering her mouth. Oh God, what have we done? Richard spoke like a man who had lost his soul. We didn't just lose the $5 billion project. We lost all human respect. Just then, the door opened. Thomas walked in, still wearing his white coat from the hospital. Mom and Dad, what's wrong? Richard and Martha recounted everything from beginning to end. When Thomas finished listening, he stood frozen. His eyes reddened with anger and regret. Sarah's mother is a person like that. Thomas clenched his fists until they turned white. Mom, Dad, you said those things to Sarah, and I also, abandoned her. Martha burst into tears. Thomas, we were wrong. Thomas's voice trembled. I should have protected Sarah. I should have trusted her family. I destroyed everything. Richard slammed his hand on the table. No, we have to apologize right now. Martha jumped up. Right. We have to kneel if necessary. We have to beg Sarah for forgiveness. Meanwhile, in a small meeting room inside Tato Holdings, America, Linda called Sarah in. Sarah stood before her mother. On one side was Linda in her familiar work uniform, and on the other was Jonathan waiting. Linda looked at her daughter gently, but seriously. Sarah, you are an adult now. I want you to know this. Actually, I am the chairman of Tato Holdings. Sarah was stunned. Mom, you are… What? Jonathan explained. Aunt Linda's group has over 30 subsidiaries with annual revenues in the billions of dollars. And even so, she still personally does cleaning every morning, because that is how she started her life. Sarah covered her mouth, tears streaming down. Why didn't you tell me? Linda took her daughter's hands. Because I wanted you to find someone who loves you for who you are. Not because I am the chairman. Not because of money. Not because of fame. Linda looked deep into Sarah's eyes. And now you see, what you lost were things that should have been lost. Outside, New York City was still brightly lit, but Sarah's life had entered a new chapter. Early the next morning, Richard and Martha Kensington stood outside Linda Miller's house in suburban New Jersey. The two had been pacing back and forth in front of the gate for nearly an hour, unable to find the right apology to say. Finally, Richard nervously pressed the doorbell. The door opened, and Linda appeared still in her blue work uniform, her face calm. As soon as they saw her, both Richard and Martha immediately fell to their knees, right on the doorstep, bowing so deeply that their foreheads nearly touched the ground. Miss Linda, no Chairman Miller, we are so sorry. We were so foolish. Please forgive us. Linda showed no anger. She simply said softly but firmly, Get up. Let's talk inside. They walked into the small but warm living room. Sarah was already sitting there, her eyes calm, but clearly distant. Richard bowed even deeper. Chairman Miller, no, Miss Linda. We made an unforgivable mistake. We judged others based only on appearance and profession. We insulted a respectable person like you. Martha was also nearly in tears. Sarah, I apologize to you. I hurt you. And your mother. I truly regret it. Sarah sighed softly, her voice low, but not harsh. I accept your apology, but the pain my mother and I went through won't easily disappear. Linda looked at the two guests with a calm gaze, recounting, My whole life I have witnessed people judging others by their status and the clothes they wear. I did not want my daughter to grow up and see the world through such eyes. That is why I kept the fact that I am the chairman a secret. I wanted her to rely on her own judgment of people. Richard bowed even lower. We understand. We were wrong. Completely wrong. We failed to see the true value of a person. Just then, the living room door opened, and Thomas walked in. He looked at Sarah, the woman he had abandoned when she needed him the most. Sarah, his voice choked. I am truly sorry. It is all my fault. I was influenced by prejudice and my parents' words. I didn't believe you when I should have protected you. I lost you because of my cowardice. Sarah looked at him for a long time, her gaze calm to the point of heartbreaking. You only left me when you thought my mother was a cleaning employee. But when you found out my mother is the chairman, you want to come back. Don't you find that ironic? Thomas's shoulders slumped, his voice trembling. I really want to start over. Just one chance. Sarah shook her head, not with anger, not with bitterness, just with a clarity she had paid for with pain. Your words about wanting to come back are worthless now. Linda looked at her daughter, smiling lightly, the smile of a mother who saw her child had grown up. You are strong enough now, Sarah. A person who cannot stand by you in difficult times is not worthy of being with you when things are good. Richard and Martha bowed in despair. Thomas could only stand motionless, watching the person he had lost forever. A few months later, Sarah met a doctor colleague at the hospital again. Dr. Adam Akers from the gastroenterology department. He knew everything about Sarah's family background, including the fact that her mother was both a cleaning worker and the chairman of a billion-dollar conglomerate. But Adam looked at her with respect. "Your mother's story deeply moves me. She started with her own working hands and reached that position. Truly admirable. I hope one day I can live with a strong will, like hers, too." For the first time in months, Sarah truly smiled. Time passed, and the affection between Sarah and Adam gradually grew gentle, calm, unhurried, unconditional. On Sarah's wedding day, in the preparation room, Sarah was surprised to see her mother still wearing the familiar blue work uniform. "Mom, why are you still wearing that?" Linda smiled kindly, the smile of a woman who had weathered life's storms. "I raised you with this uniform. It is my entire life. And today I want to bring it with me as a reminder that all true value comes from one's own hands." During the ceremony, when Linda stepped onto the stage to speak, the entire hall fell silent. "I used this uniform to clean floors, to earn a living, to build belief, to protect my family. A person's value is not measured by status money or appearance, but by how they live, how they treat others. Love is not measured by conditions, it is proven by action." Applause rang out, lasting like a genuine tribute. 1 year later, Sarah and Adam had a lovely baby boy. Linda held her grandson in her arms, her face gentler than ever. "True happiness," she said, "is not money or status. It is the heart that wants to protect someone with all its strength." Sarah took her mother's hand. "Mom, I learned everything from your example. I am grateful to you for everything." In that small room, there was no flashiness of Manhattan, no city lights, only the warmth of a real family, bonded by sincerity and perseverance, not status or appearance. A family built on kindness, respect, and unconditional love. That is true wealth. Thank you for listening to the end of the story. If you love simple stories that touch the heart, please click the subscribe button so you don't miss the next videos. And also to let me know that there are still many people listening to moving stories like this.